Well, first of all, divine command theory is something which always comes into place in every aspect of life when it comes to law. First of all, even if, let's say for example, why do we murder? Why shouldn't we murder? You can go on giving reasons, but if I question the reasons themselves, uh, for example, let's say why shouldn't be underage people, underage women or underage men should not be married. Then you could say that because they are not giving because marriage should be consensual and they are not in a state to give consent. Then I would ask the question, why do we need to have a consent? uh, then perhaps you could say that because it's against the dignity of the person if you are not asking the consent. Then I said, why should I care about the dignity of the person? Then you would say, then otherwise there will be a total anarchy. And I said, what's wrong with anarchy and why shouldn't we have an anarchy? You could lastly end up saying that there will be destruction of this entire world, and I would be saying, why shouldn't there be a destruction of the entire world? What's wrong with the destruction of entire world? Universe will go on its own way. So clearly speaking, if I go to ask why and why and why, um, you know, you cannot satisfy the curiosity of the person who wants to follow his own way until and unless you push it through a value based system. You say that it is intrinsically wrong or something like that. You just shut the mouth of the person by throwing out a value. And this shutting of the person by throwing out a value, it's nothing but the atheist form of divine command theory, because you cannot involve God in a secular country. Therefore, you just say that it's against the human value, something called as human right. The Declaration of the Independence says that we find this truth as self-evident and so on and so forth. Now that to a certain extent is non-secular in nature, but that's where America is built on. That's where we are built on, etc. We are not questioning some dignity, some human rights, etc. And we are not going beyond that question. We accept. We have to accept. We don't have any other choice. And why we accept? Why don't we have any choice? Because it's a value that's basic to us, and that is just one way of saying that it's a divine commandment theory. It is given. We don't know it from whom it is given, but it is accepted by all, shared by all, and it should be shared by all because we consider it as important, and shared by all. So there is no scientific reason why we should consider it. There is no scientific reason why we should consider consent of the person in sexual matters, but we do consider it because we consider it as the basic value. And when we say it's a basic value, that means you cannot further question the value itself. So divine command theory is something of that sort. It's a basic value. Now, first of all, when we talk about when God says it is a sin, when God says it is not a sin, etc. First of all, we need to look at the circumstances and all of that thing which is true. But if we are not able to look at any reasons why a particular sin is wrong, then we should go with the divine command theory. And this is especially true with sins which are not a part of culture. For example, many people would consider that banning of pornography wouldn't be a sin. Banning of pornography or banning of murder, but some people might ask what's wrong with banning, what's wrong with pornography. Some people would ask what's wrong with homosexuality. Some people would ask what's wrong with me identifying as a transgender, etc. Now you have to, it's your obligation to find questions to those answers as much as you can. But if you don't find that answer, doesn't mean that you don't follow what the church says, because then, in my opinion, it would be placing your intellectual authority, placing your brain, or placing your limited mind that you have above God, and then you are worshipping your own intellect, you are worshipping your own God, which anyway is finite, and it's so small compared to the divine wisdom. And so, at the end of the day, it would be the divine command theory which would answer the question why we should do what we should do, and why we shouldn't do what we shouldn't do, and why we should follow the rules of the church and not go against it, even though we don't find any reason for following that. And that's simply because God, our creator, and who knows all things, says that we shouldn't do it, and perhaps we live the intellect to him. Now, that's not always the case. We should always inquire the reason why we are doing this, and that's absolutely true. But at the same time, we need to, and just like in apologetics, we always answer the question why and why and why. We need to answer these questions why it is like that, why it is like this. But if we don't get the answer, doesn't mean that we walk out from the church. It's just that church knows better. So similarly, the Pope knows better, or like the God knows better when it comes to following rules which I cannot explain understand. And with regard to things like homosexuality, etc., it is already in the it is already in the minds of the people, that it's already revealed to the church, and we know that revelation revealed to the church is by God. So yeah, that would be the thing.